If somebody were to come running up to you with a weapon or the threat of a weapon, demanding your personal possessions, your valuables, your phone, your wallet, whatever you have on you, would you comply or would you fight back? Now that is exactly the type of scenario that we are going to go over in this fight breakdown. And in this video, we have what appears to be a solicitor waiting for somebody to answer the door, and out of nowhere comes a gentleman running up to him with a weapon or a threat of a weapon. He never actually reveals weapon during this entire encounter and just starts demanding this man's valuables. Now, this man decides to take matters into his own hand, has zero intention of complying, and decides to fight back. The question is, did he make the right choice or not? Let's break it down. So this gentleman standing right here is your solicitor. Now, before we even really dive into this video, I just want to point out that at the beginning of this, you'll notice that he does a very nice job of being aware of his surroundings. His phone is sitting here on his keyboard, but as we start watching this video a little bit, you'll notice that at no point does he actually start sitting and just staring at his phone or being stuck and sucked into his phone. He's very aware of what's going on. He's keeping his head on a swivel, and that allows him to take the appropriate action when he sees this gentleman up here, who you can see his feet starting to come into frame. When he starts beelining it to this guy, which I'm assuming, now there's no audio in this video, so we have to kind of guess what is said here, but I'm assuming that as this man approaches, he starts demanding, hey, give me your phone, give me your wallet, whatever. I'm gonna hurt you. I've got a gun in my pocket, a knife, whatever the case is. We'll touch upon that here in a second, but he's threatening with something. Now, because this guy kept his head on a swivel, he is able to see him walking in. And you'll notice that as this man starts getting closer, not only does he start to put his phone, you can see his phone's right here in his right hand, not only does he start putting it into his right pocket, but he also puts himself and steps back into a fighting or bladed stance to prevent the man from actually being able to get closer. Now, I want to backtrack just a little bit here. If we get right here when the man first comes into frame, let's go over his body language a little bit, right? He's got his arm already extended, which means he's already demanding something. Again, we don't know what he's actually saying, but again, probably demanding valuable possessions. Now, more importantly, his left hand here is stuck in his hoodie pocket, which is probably what he is using as the threat of a weapon. Now, we don't actually know if there is a weapon because, as I mentioned, throughout this entire encounter, a weapon never actually does get brandished in this video. But just the idea that there's a threat makes you question, do I comply or do I fight back? Now, in my opinion, if somebody were coming up to rob me and they actually were brandishing a weapon of any sort, I would most likely comply, especially if I'm with my loved ones or my kids. I would definitely just give over whatever it is that they're asking for and hope that we can move on scot-free. Now, understand, compliance is not a guarantee of your safety. They could still hurt you, shoot you, stab you, beat you. Doesn't matter. Just because you complied doesn't mean that you get a free pass. However, you have a greater chance of being able to walk away from those situations by complying than fighting back. In this specific situation, because this man has yet to actually brandish a weapon, and as we'll see as this video goes on, his physical demeanor kind of hints of the fact that he's not really in the right condition to fight back, leads, I think, is kind of what led the solicitor to believe that, hey, I have a better shot of just kind of protecting myself and fighting back than actually complying. But again, let's kind of continue watching. So the man continues to approach up. As I mentioned, you'll see the solicitor step back here into his fighting stance right away. Now, one thing that he does nicely is he uses his lead hand here as kind of like a frame or a post to keep the robber from actually being able to kind of close the distance or being able to actually access everything in his pockets. Now, understand his left hand is still locked in his hoodie pocket, as I say, and I'll repeat this. He never removes his hand from his pocket, nor does he ever actually present or brandish a weapon of any kind. So now, as we continue kind of watching this video, I think this solicitor is doing a nice job of kind of analyzing the body language of this guy and kind of ultimately making that decision subconsciously. Could I actually take this guy in a fight? Is that a better opportunity to fight back, or do I just simply comply? So far, based off of his own body language of keeping himself bladed, keeping his stuff in his pockets, using that front arm to constantly kind of push the robber back, shows me that he has zero intent of actually complying. And he's simply, in my opinion, just kind of waiting for that right opportunity. Well, this is where that opportunity really kind of starts to come to fruition, right? As we start watching this a little bit more, you'll see that the robber's going to kind of step back, and right here you see him kind of crisscross his feet a little bit, which might kind of give you the hint of, is this guy under the influence of something? Is he drunk a little bit? If that is the case, and again, because we don't have the audio, we're just guessing here, but he could be slurring his speech a little bit, mumbling over his words. Again, all just kind of giving off signs of this guy is not really in the right state of mind or physical state to physically protect himself and fight back if I were to decide to not comply, right? Not only that, but he also then stumbles off the steps here. And I think at this point, now that this guy, again, one hand is completely still occupied in his pocket, he's crisscrossed his feet, he has now stepped off the curb and stumbled a little bit. If I were the solicitor in the situation and I had any question of whether or not I could fight back, I would absolutely agree that, yeah, I could probably take this guy. No weapon has been brandished. Yes, he might be threatening the use of a weapon, but nothing has been brandished. I also understand that by having a hand in your hoodie pocket, if you did in fact have a weapon, that there's a good chance it's going to get caught on the material as you go to pull it out. So again, leads me also to believe that I have some time in case he does decide to draw the weapon. I could still probably land a couple shots, or if I had the experience, I could easily get hands-on with the weapon hand and isolate that without causing too much risk of injury to myself, right? So now as this man decides to set back, this is where we're going to see the solicitor take actions into his own hand. Now right here you have the robber attempting one more time to try and reach and grab something. Now right here, this moment is where I kind of just solidified my belief that this man or the solicitor does in fact have some training, and it's the idea and the fact and evidence right here that he trapped this man's lead arm. If you notice, his hand is pushing and clearing that lead arm that the robber was using to kind of grab something, but that is also the robber's only defense for his face. Now, typically, if I have both my hands available and I have both my hands up and you trap my lead arm in a fight, I have the ability to move my rear arm in place to at least absorb the impact or potentially redirect the punch a little bit and take some of the damage off of my head. In this specific situation, the robber's got one hand buried in his pocket, the other hand's completely trapped. You've got a clear shot for a punch right to the face, which is exactly what the solicitor does. You'll see that he winds up a beautiful right cross. Not only does this punch connect beautifully, again, no way for this guy to defend himself, but he also opens up his hips, he rotates on his foot a little bit, got all the momentum and power into that punch, knocks the guy flat on his ass, clear as day, directly down onto the concrete. So, if we go back to, again, the initial question, would you comply or would you fight back? Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's clearly going to be your decision, and you really have to take into account a lot of different variables. Again, one, who are you with? That's probably going to be the biggest thing. If you're by yourself like this guy, sure, you might have a better chance of being able to fight because you don't have to worry about the safety of anybody else. That still being said, chances are you're better off just handing over whatever it is. But pay attention to the body language. In this specific situation, no gun ever comes into place, no knife ever comes into place, no weapon of any sort ever gets brandished. The man is clearly stumbling and tripping over his own legs, which means he's clearly under the influence of something and really not in the headspace to be able to fight back, even though he's trying to threaten the fact that he would beat this guy up. And so the guy just decides to take action and defends himself clearly. Now, the big thing that this man does very well after this physical encounter, which is something I encourage a lot of people to do. First off, if we fast forward here a little bit, you'll notice that he starts kind of ringing the doorbell again. I'm assuming this is to get the people's attention that live in the building, whether it's an office or a residence, so that maybe they can call and notify the police. The other thing that he does really well over here is he actually starts kind of, as you'll see here, he's digging through the hoodie. He actually spends some time, as we see here, searching through the man's pockets. Now, this is something that a lot of people you don't see often in videos is I'm searching for pockets, I'm checking to see if there's a weapon, so therefore if there is a weapon, I can clear it, get it out of the way so that if all of a sudden this man comes to, he doesn't just reach for the weapon and attack me while I'm not paying attention. If it was a situation where a weapon was brandished and you still manage to fight back, knock somebody out, and they drop the weapon, you should still take the time to clear and get the weapon away from them, again, just in case if they come to. Now, even more importantly, what this man does is once he realizes that there is no weapon, as you see here, he immediately takes his phone back out, gets on the phone, and I'm assuming to call 911. And again, this is another big lesson that I encourage people to do is if you do find yourself in a physical altercation, make sure you notify the authorities. First of all, make sure the scene is safe, and if it's not safe, get somewhere where it is safe, and then immediately get on the phone, call 911, call your lawyers, whoever you need to call to, again, put yourself ahead of the situation. It's going to look so much better for you from a self-defense perspective and from a legal perspective if you explain exactly what happened, your point of view. Now, the big reason that I like this video is it emphasizes perfectly just how much one punch could change your life, and that if you find yourself in a situation that may turn physical, you need to really reconsider, is that the route I want to go? And I bring this up for a big reason. In this specific case, the man who falls and hits his head ended up dying due to the impact. Now, fortunately for the solicitor, as far as I'm aware, he did not face any legal repercussions because it was justified. They had the video footage, so it shows that he acted in self-defense, and he did not take anything further than what it needed to be, meaning that he didn't just start stomping or beating the guy once he was on the ground. But nonetheless, he still killed a man. And as a young man, he appears to be late 20s, maybe early 30s, that's a very heavy toll that he now has to live with emotionally and mentally for the rest of his life. Even if it was a self-defense situation, maybe he can justify that in his head to help him sleep better at night, but he still has to live with the fact that he took a man's life. Now, Let's change the circumstances. Let's say maybe this gentleman was at a bar and somebody looked at him the wrong way, or he gets into an argument with somebody, and instead of just walking away and keeping his ego in check, he decides to show how manly he is and start a fight. And in turn, he hits a guy falls, hits their head, and dies. Well, now he could be potentially facing manslaughter charges, and he could be facing years, if not life, behind bars. And if he had a family, he's now leaving the family without a father, right? There are always going to be consequences when it comes to fighting. Hell, he could even be on the other side and somebody punches him because he's running his mouth, and now he falls, hits his head, and gets severely injured, paralyzed, killed. Something that, again, is going to not only impact his life, but the person that punched him, as well as all their loved ones. Like, fighting, there's never a good consequence. There's nothing good that ever comes from fighting, even in a self-defense situation. So if you find yourself in a verbal altercation or a verbal argument, and there's any hint that things are about to turn physical, I don't care what the scenario is, do whatever you need to do to be able to walk away. Learn how to de-escalate. Learn how to talk yourself out of situations. Lie if you have to. Emphasize with the person. Apologize even if you know 100% that you are in the right. Suck it up and apologize. Just do what you need to do to prevent things from getting violent. And if you do feel that you have no choice but to make things go violent and you do need to get physical, then you really need to ask yourself, is this situation that I'm in right now worth going to jail for or potentially dying over? Because in reality, those are two very common consequences for getting into a physical altercation in real life. Just keep that in mind. Stay safe.